Hey guys, welcome back to UKDiver. It's your first time here, then just welcome. And where we are today is in a little place called Truckhaven, which is a trucker stop just outside of Carnforth, because I'm actually here doing some ocean diver training for the weekend, and we're staying over the night, and we're staying in Truckhaven. So if you've been to Cape Ray before, chances are you've probably eaten breakfast in this place, but that's where we are, so apologies for the bad lighting. But what I thought is I would finally do this video that I've been promising to do for a little while. And the one thing I want you to remember is this. If in doubt, bail out. First thing to note is if you see this moving, I've got a new weird gimbal thing that I'm using as my sort of cameraman. So if I move, it should track me. Let me know in the comments down below if you think it's done a good job. But yeah, it is quite creepy. But anyway, why don't I want the CCR? Well, I'm going to give you the short version. And I've got a live video coming up, and if you want to chat a bit more about that, I'll be online on the 21st of December at 8 PM, so you can ask me some questions there. But I'm going to give you the short version, and the really short version for those that just want to click and go is my wife won't let me have one. There we are, so done and dusted, off you go, carry on with your life. If you want to know why, then get a cup of tea and a biscuit and I'll run you through it. She's not a scuba diver, okay, just for that. She is very much a dive wag. She will not remove her mask and put it back on, so she can't pass the ocean diver course. Believe me, I've tried. But anyway, she knows way too much about scuba diving, and she knows way too much about CCR diving. And she asks awkward questions, and she had a very bad experience with CCR as well, which is why it's always been a red line. So I think I'm going to start with telling you why I don't put my foot down with a firm hand and demand a CCR. And there are a few reasons for that. A, she's my wife and I love her, and she lets me get away with pretty much everything else. The CCR has been a one red line, and it's not been one that I've felt the need to put heads on because I don't particularly want one either. The risk of messing about with neat oxygen and all, that faff that's going on your back and mixing nitrox is not for me, really, I don't think. I don't need to dive super deep. As everybody who follows me on this channel knows, I'm a total squidge fan. So 60, 70, 80 metre dives do not appeal, to go and see a bit of scrap metal, in my opinion. Like I say, I like a wreck as much as the next guy, but normally for what lives on them. And the deeper you go, the less there is there. So there's no interest for me there. The reason I've been interested in some of the aspects of CCR, mainly the bubbleless aspect of it, is what I'm more interested in. The extended dive time? No, not really. I'm pretty much ready to get out after an hour in the UK. I'm cold enough. So, the thought of doing 3 or 4 hours is just horrifying. The deep, again, not an issue. So it doesn't, a lot of the things that a rebreather allows you to do would just be a total waste of time for me. Or, I can certainly get the benefit out of other systems, shall we say. So it's not something that I felt the need to put any pressure on her for. So she doesn't want me to have one. I'm fine with it. It's okay. It's no big deal. Like I say, she lets me get away with anything else. I spend far more of our disposable income than I probably should on my hobby. She gets involved with things. This YouTube channel and the things that I'm doing with this are not doable without her. She's my camera person, she's my support, she makes sure I've got everything. So it's not a battle that I'm going to have with her because I don't feel the need. So that's that. If you're thinking, well, Andy, you're just a bit bitch whipped, fine. If that's your thoughts, I'm okay with that. Why is she so against it then, I guess, is the next question. So first of all, in my diving career, I have known personally 8 divers that have not come back after a dive. Out of those 8, 2 have been on open circuit. One of those was confirmed to have had a heart attack, so it wasn't actually the scuba diving that killed him, really. And the other one was 78. All the rest have been on rebreathers. And my wife knows, as much as anybody who does a rebreather course, that the first rule is, if in doubt, bail out. And when we discuss it, she always asks me one question, which of course I'm not capable of answering, is, well, why didn't they bail out? And, she has asked this question of multiple CCR divers when they've tried to persuade her that, CCR is so much better because there's so many more bailout options, okay? The question she'll ask is, why does there need to be if it's so safe? That's a pretty good question. And then she says, well, out of these 5 divers, and when I say 5 divers, these are people that I knew. I'm lucky, I guess, that none of them were really close friends. but they were, people that we knew. We'd been on dive trips before, we followed on social media, we'd arranged dive trips with. So, suddenly for them not to be there, and the wife, has to see their spouses, their families have to deal with the consequences of after that. And, and again, in all open honesty, guys, only 2 of those were really doing anything that you would call like a proper CCR dive, where they're sort of, seriously deep, 70, 80 meters plus. All the rest were at recreational depths. In fact, some of them were diving with open circuit divers when they, when they went. So, it's to her, it's the lack of explanation of what's going on. And again, that question, well, if something was going wrong, why didn't they bail out? If you have a look at this year's incident report from BSAC, just read the fatalities section. There are a number of rebreather divers that passed away, unfortunately, last year. And, there's one of them where it just talks about this diver. It must have been quite a length of time that this guy was acting erratically. He had 2 other rebreather divers there that seemed to be incapable of assisting him in any way, shape or form. But he was just diving, not responding to signals, not... well, again, why didn't he bail out? There was clearly time for him to bail out. It wasn't something that happened really quick. So is it just the fact that, breathing the gases scrambles your brain that quick that you haven't got time to react to it? We just don't know, and I can't answer that question. And frankly, neither can you. And, it's not a case either that she's particularly bothered about, is it the unit failure or is it the diver failure? Because again, we've had people, the units don't break anymore, they're very reliable, and they probably are. But that's even worse in that respect, then, isn't it? Because it means the diver was at fault. And I can honestly say, guys, that none of these people that have passed away were idiots. These were not silly divers. These were people that have been diving rebreather for a long time, had espoused to my wife of the benefits of rebreather, and then 6, 8, 12 months later they're no longer with us because they were killed by their rebreather, or for not doing something with their rebreather, or whatever. It might be their own fault, but that doesn't make it any better, because these were, like I said, solid divers, and if they got it wrong, what are the chances of me getting it right, kind of thing. So it's just it's a no wash with her, okay? It's not, and she's right. She's absolutely right. It's just more risk than I need in my diving, okay? I don't need to have all that risk. I can do exactly what I want to do on something like the Mares SCR. I can get the bubbleless effect without having all the risks of it. So for me, it's just a no-go. So guys, the second reason the wife's not keen is because she had a bad experience. In fact, we both had a bad experience with a rebreather dive. So a number of years ago, I went off to do a trip in Eyemouth to dive the Glanmire. And if you've never dove the Glanmire, it's only 30-35 metres. It's not particularly challenging. It's a popular recreational dive over out of Eyemouth because it's one of the only wrecks out there that is diveable within recreational limits, so people do it a lot. We were with a different group. It wasn't a trip our club had arranged, and it was about 50-50. There was about half of us on open circuit and the other half on CCR. What makes this more important is, and you need to know, is that it was the first time I'd managed to get the wife on the boat. We'd asked Gary if she could come on the boat, and he was like, yeah, fine, just stay out of the diver's way and bring some cake. So we could deal with that. So if you've never dove on Gary's old boat, Wave Dancer, that boat had a fly deck. So the wife just scuttled up there, and basically I forgot she was there. So anyway, gets to the Glanmire, conditions are great. We jump in, we go do the dive. I was with a buddy who was kind of coming to the end of his diving career. He's kind of lost his mojo, lost the love for it. And he'd sort of said, if I have enough, I'm just going to go. And you can buddy with another 2 guys who were from our club who were down there. So we went down as sort of a loose 4. Basically got to the bottom of the shot line, said, right, I've had enough, I'm bored. And then went back up, leaving me as a 3. The other 2 I was with were actually rebreather divers. So I sort of hung around with them for 40 minutes, something like that. I set the bag up and then left them to it. Anyway, as I got to the surface and the boat was coming over, it was clear to see there was somebody sat in the corner on oxygen. You could see the tube coming up and the mask on, and I was like, oh, here we go, what's going on here? So anyway, got lifted onto the boat. I was 3rd person on the boat. There was this guy in the corner, and then there was my buddy. And it was pretty carnage, to be honest with you. There was the guy's unit strewn all over the deck. The handset appeared not to be attached to the unit anymore. There was the webbing had clearly been cut, the harness. And he was sat in the corner on the O2. And I've got to be honest with you guys, he was not looking very well. All his eyes were bloodshot. The blood vessels in his eye burst. I don't know if you've seen that before in somebody, but so it looked like he got devil's eyes because they were just red because they were filled with blood. He clearly had a bit of a nosebleed, and he wasn't looking too hot, to be honest with you. But he was conscious when I got on the boat, and he was talking. Anyway, I got on the boat. The deckhand said, "Right, Andy, just sit in the corner. Don't get up. Just sit there and keep out of the way. The RNLI's on its way." So that's what I did. Couldn't have been 2 minutes later, and basically the St Abbs lifeboat and the Eyemouth lifeboat both like rocked up at exactly the same time. And within seconds, there must have been about 30 RNLI guys rushing towards this rebreather guy, and they all seemed to have like trauma shears. So anyway, being a good Yorkshire lad, he was he was conscious enough to tell him to piss off, you're not cutting my dry suit, kind of thing. So they thought, well, it was obviously okay. So they didn't slice his dry suit off him, put away the trauma shears, and then did what they did. They did a few checks on him, and then made the decision that they were going to airlift him off to Aberdeen. He got put on the all-weather lifeboat, the big one, and we left him to it. And we were on the way back, and you saw the helicopter come, and they took him away off to Aberdeen. So we scraped his unit up off the deck, sort of put it in a pile. That was that. Got unkitted, had a little chat. So we were talking to the guy's buddy, because he was buddied with another rebreather diver that he'd not dove with before. And we sort of said, you know, what the hell went on there? From his perspective, they were down there at 30 plus meters. After a couple of minutes, this diver came over and signaled that there was a problem. He was pointing to his controller, signaling that there was something wrong. The guy didn't understand quite what was wrong. So anyway, apparently he offered him his bailout. That was refused. And then he made whatever signal it is for him to go on to his bailout, which again was no, and then more tapping at the controller. And then apparently that's it, a few seconds later, unconscious. So the buddy had sort of lifted him and took him up to 7 meters, at which point he decided he'd risked enough and basically floated this diver to the surface, you know, inflated him and sent him on his way, kind of thing. Now, the story from the boat is they're watching the bubbles and cruising around the wreck, and this body pops to the surface. And again, you need to remember, my wife is on the fly deck watching all this. First time out, yeah? And she tells me that, you know, when we got off afterwards, that, you know, for that split second, she thought it was me, you know, until the guy lolled over, and he had blue stripes on his dry suit. So then she knew it wasn't me. But for that split second, you know, she thought it was me. The buddy I was with, that had already been picked up on the boat, because he basically went down and went back up again, had to jump in and go drag him onto the dive lift. So they managed to get him him and his unit onto the dive lift with his legs dangling over, lift him up sort of halfway. The deckhand had got down and sliced all the webbing off. Anyway, they sorted it, and he was on the deck. But at that point, this guy was gone. You know what I mean? Not breathing, full of water. So CPR ensued, and apparently come around really, you know, quickly, coughed a load of water up. And then they got him on the O2, and within a matter of seconds, apparently he was like conscious enough, but, you know, by this point was not in a good way. And then obviously I'd come up, I was third on the boat, and I've just told you the story from there. We passed him over to the RNLI boat, they helicoptered him off, we went back to harbour, and about for an hour and a half after that, I got bollocking. Yeah, so, you know, another guy kills himself, I get bollocking, you know. I thought you told me this was safe, blah, 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 you know, and on it went. So from that day onwards, I wasn't allowed a CCR, because again, the wife asked the question, you know, he was offered a bailout. He got his own bailout. There was something wrong. Why didn't he bail out? And again, it's just a question I can't answer. A few months later, I'd spoken again to the diver after he'd got out of hospital and was all fine, and, you know, the unit has to go away to its manufacturer, and they sort of download its brain and tell what went on. And I think that's half the issue as well, because you never get the full story. I don't know where you go to get this information to find out what did actually go on, because I spoke to the diver and I got one story, and his story was mechanical failure. However, a few weeks after that, I was talking to the organiser of the dive trip, and he sort of laughed and went, nah, it wasn't mechanical failure. And I was like, what do you mean? And then I got this little GoPro clip, because everybody was sort of wearing their spaz helmets, we'd all got GoPros. And they sent me this clip, and I sat and watched it, I don't know, a dozen times. I was like, I can't see what's going on here, I can't see what's wrong. But I'm an open circuit diver, and I'm expecting to see bubbles come out of your face. And it was only when he twigged that, actually, he's on CCR, he shouldn't be bubbling. And there's the clear video of him going across the bottom, finning along quite happily, with bubbles coming out of him, just as you would normally expect. Yeah, this particular unit, which I'm not going to name, it's a very popular unit, and it comes with a BOV, and the only thing I can think of, the only explanation I can see for why he would be bubbling is because he's dove with the BOV open, and basically he's done a 30-metre dive on a 3-litre cylinder, and obviously that's not lasted very long, and that was probably what his unit was trying to tell him. But again, that still doesn't answer the question, is why didn't he bail out? If it had just bailed out, he'd accepted the bailout or used his own bailout, we wouldn't have had all this drama and kerfuffle, and he wouldn't have spent 2 weeks in Aberdeen Hospital. That's the story, guys, and that's the explanation of why I do not want, and why I will not be getting, a full-blown CCR. Sorry if it's not been as exciting as you were hoping, or perhaps it's been more exciting than you were hoping. Leave any comments you have down below. It's not going to change anything, okay? You're not going to talk me or the wife into doing it, because I'm getting the unit that I want. It does the things I want it to do, with a risk profile that is suitable for me. I hope you join me on the 21st for the Q&A, where you can ask me more questions about this, and I will expand on it if you like, because there are many other reasons why I don't like the idea of going on to full CCR, mainly because they're fat, blah blah, but we can go through that if you want. But other than that, guys, as always, I will see you